Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Muddy Mint. Today, we're doing a really exciting video because we're going to be talking about usage rates, specifically usage rates of fragrance oil and essential oil in your soap. Now, this video is actually applicable to more than just soap because usage rates are used in all kinds of products, whether it's lotion, lip balm, candles, any kind of product that holds a scent or has a scent. You're going to want to be looking at usage rates. Specifically, you're going to be looking at the IFRA, which is the International Fragrance Association usage rates in your products. Now, this is super important in order to make sure that you're making safe products, products that are safe for the skin, that are safe for people that are going to be using them. And so we're going to talk about IFRA today. We're going to dig in deep. And also, I have a spreadsheet that I created just for you guys. So I'm going to share my screen with you and let's get started. Okay, so this is the batch of soap that we came up with last time we did a video together. And this is our soap calc recipe formulation video if you want to check it out. But this is a recipe that we reformulated to work with the style of recipe that I like to make, which is a palm-free soap. It's low in coconut oil and just has some really great oils and butters. This is not a recipe that we've ever made, but it's sort of an idea of a recipe that you may want to make. And this is a 54-ounce batch of soap. And let me go to this page so you can see this a little bit more clearly. But when you create a recipe in Soap Calc, there's going to be an oil weight up here, 54 ounces. It's also down here. You see the grams as well as the pounds down here as well. Now, this is the oil weight of the recipe. And this is important to know because when you are figuring out how much fragrance to use in your soap, you want to use oil weight as the amount. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is in just a minute. But oil weight is up here and it's different than the soap weight. So if you're making a soap, like this is a 5-pound soap, that can go in a 5-pound mold. If you're making a 5-pound soap, your weight of your soap is going to be 5 pounds, but your oil weight is going to be less. And in our case, our oil weight is 54 ounces or 1,531 grams. So what we're going to do today is we're going to plug this into this little calculator that I created. Now, I just did this on Google Sheets, and I will be sharing this calculator with you. So this is something that you'll be able to download from our website. If you go to muddymint.com, we'll have the calculator there for you for free to use. And so you can play around with this and adjust it for your needs. What you're going to do when you download this spreadsheet is you're going to fill out these sections in orange. So all of these little orange cells right here, you're going to want to fill those out with information. And when you're coming up with how much fragrance to use in your bar of soap or in your batch of soap, you want to know how many ounces of base oils you have in your recipe. And you also want to know how much fragrance in total you're going to be using. So 3% is considered light, 4.5% is considered medium, and 6% is considered strong. Now, if you are creating a different type of product that has different usage rates, then you can change the numbers up here to match what you need. So instead of using 6%, perhaps you would use a different percentage. Now, the 3 to 6% is kind of a usage rate that's known in the cold process soap making industry. So that's basically what a lot of us use. In certain countries like the UK, there are assessments that need to be done by chemists in order to be able to sell your soap. And so 3% might be the maximum amount that you can use. And in fact, your usage might be lower than this. And so please take that into account when you're looking at the spreadsheet, because this is what I use for my business in the US here. But if you're in another country, there might be different rules. So definitely make sure that you are following the regulations in your own country. So a light usage rate would be 1.62 ounces, medium would be 2.43, and strong is 6%, which is 3.24. Now, I also have this max in here, and that's based on per pound of oils. If you look in Soap Calc, you'll see here that there is a box that allows you to put in what you want your fragrance amount to be. And this recipe we got from Brambleberry, and we changed it in order to change the oils, and we changed it to a different number of ounces to fit our mold size, but we kept the fragrance ratio the same. What I mean by that is that whatever Brambleberry had in there for their usage rate for that particular fragrance, we left that in there. And so that was 0.74. Now, when I'm making soap, I use 1 ounce per pound of oils. And that's what this is right here. The max is 1 ounce per pound of oils, which comes out to 6.25%. So I would say that's the maximum usage rate that you want to use in your soap. And that's what we use. We do use the max amount in our soaps, which is why they smell so strong. And remember that essential oils dissipate over time. So if you were using fragrance oils, you probably don't want to use this maximum amount because it would likely be really overpowering. And so, just because there is a max doesn't mean you have to go to the max. You know what I mean? You definitely want to play around with this. And again, make sure that you're following the regulations in your country where you're selling soap if you are selling it. Okay, so this is 1 ounce per pound of oils, and here are the number of pounds of oil. So as you can see, it matches up. So there's 3.38 pounds of oil in our recipe. Again, this is a 5-pound batch of soap. So this is just the oils, and it comes out to 3.38 ounces of fragrance for that soap. So it's basically 1-to-1. And I also have usage rate in grams here. And because this 1 ounce per pound of oils is more confusing when you're using grams, I actually converted it here for you. So you can also use 1 ounce per pound of oils and use Soap Calc the same way that we do in the US, or whoever uses ounces for their measurements. And so I have a tab down here for grams specifically for that. So just know that I calculated all that for you guys. All right. So going back to the basics, if you have 54 ounces of oil in your recipe, then your usage rate is based on that. And the reason people do this is because the amount of water that is in your recipe is very subjective. So remember that when you make soap, you're mixing oils and lye, and then the water is a carrier for the lye. And in addition to that, you can add more water or more liquid, whether it's goat milk, aloe vera, carrot juice, whatever it might be. You're adding that to your batter. But at the end of the day, when the soap is done curing and you're ready to sell it, your bar actually weighs less. So like our bars, when we first make them, weigh, I think about 5.6, maybe 5.625 is what it comes out to, according to, the calculations. And then by the time we sell our soap, it's more like 5 ounces. So the usage rates are based on the final weight of the product. Again, this is why we use oil weight, because cold processed soap shrinks in size. The amount of water is subjective. You might use a water discount, you might not use a water discount. And therefore, it's just really important to make sure that you're creating a safe product. So the first part of this spreadsheet has to do with how much total fragrance and total essential oil you're going to use. And that's part 1 of 2 parts, because once you figure out the total, then you can figure out what the usage rate is per essential oil or per fragrance. And that's what the second part of this spreadsheet is right here. So 54 ounces, and then this is the light, medium, strong, and the max. All right. So what I've done here, this next orange box, is how much fragrance are you going to use from the range above? So I could decide to use 3.38 in my batch, and you'd see that this comes out to 6.26%. I've calculated the percentage and the fragrance ratio here for you. So when you change this, let's say I do 3.24, you'll see that we're at 6%, which matches up here. And that's a fragrance ratio of 0.96. So this way you can add this into Soap Calc if you wanted to make 0.96 over here, calculate, then you'll see that your fragrance amount is 3.24, which should match the spreadsheet. Yeah. So if we go back, the ratio in this particular recipe, and this recipe used a fragrance oil, the ratio in here was 0.74, which means the total is 2.5, and that's written right here. And I actually think that it shows up here as well. So 2.5 is the total. So that's what I'm going to put in here just because it matches what the recipe wants me to do. And you'll see that comes out to 0.74 per pound of oils. And the total percentage fragrance is 4.63%. So that is a usage rate for this particular brambleberry recipe. Now, if you're formulating your own recipe and you're deciding how much fragrance to use, then you can choose from this range right here, depending on whether you like a light scent or a stronger scent. Now, once you've decided on your usage rate, that's not the end, because you can't just put in 2.5 ounces of any essential oil that you want. It's going to depend on the usage rate of that essential oil. And the same is true for fragrance oils. So the IFRA is an organization that basically takes an essential oil or a fragrance oil, and they will break it down into the chemical composition of that particular essential oil. I'm just going to say essential oil because that's what we use, but this is also true for fragrance oil. So once it figures out the amount of, a variety of different components of that particular essential oil, because essential oils are made up of these different components, then it'll figure out what percentage of those components are in there. And if it's a component that tends to be an allergen or something that is irritating to the skin or that people might be sensitive to, then it determines the usage rate based on that. So this next section here, you're going to be including your fragrance. So let's say I want to make a blend of, this is just an example, of lavender and spearmint, 50-50. So I've put that into the list here, and then it's automatically going to calculate that I'm going to put 1.25 ounces of lemongrass, because that's 50%, and then 1.25 ounces of spearmint. And you'll see that the spearmint is in red, and I'll show you why in just a second. The next part you have to fill out is the IFRA usage rate. Now, there are places that you can go to look up usage rates. Like, for example, EOCalc is a website that a lot of people use that was developed by Kenna at Modern Soap Making. And it is a fantastic place to go to get an idea for essential oil blends, for one thing. There's a ton of great blends on there, but also usage rates. However, if you want to know the usage rate of your exact essential oil, which is what I want to know, there are places to go look for it. And so I will show you exactly how I look up the usage rates for my essential oils. And that's what this section is here. This section is going to require a little bit of research on your part to figure out usage rates. But I do think that knowing this and understanding how it works is really empowering, because then you can create all kinds of different blends and you don't have to worry about the usage rate or whether you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. So you'll see that the usage rate for lavender is 100% and the usage rate for spearmint is 2%. So where did I find these numbers? I'm going to go to the New Directions website. This is where I get most of my essential oils, and you'll see why in just a second. First of all, they have great essential oils. Here's their lavender 4042. And if I click on that, you can see all the information for it come up, the price, obviously, add to cart. But then down here, there are a bunch of product details, and you should always read this stuff when you're buying an essential oil. Sometimes an essential oil isn't 100% natural. Lavender 4042 isn't always all natural. And so definitely take a look at this stuff, know what you're buying. If you buy an essential oil from Amazon, it might have a carrier oil included. It might have a fragrance. I've seen lots of essential oils that have fragrance in them, and they don't really tell you. You have to look at the ingredients, but when you buy essential oils from a reputable place like New Directions, you will get all the information that you need. And if I go back up here, you'll see there's this little jump to section. And I want to go to GCMS and documents. So down here, these are all the documents related to Lavender 4042. And there's a lot of information in here. And I recommend you actually look at all of this because it's all very interesting. There's the certificate of analysis, the safety data sheet. The one that we are looking for here is the quality and regulatory info. So if I click on that, and I open it up, there's a lot of great info in here. And, you know, if you want to know if your essential oil or your fragrance oil, for that matter, is gluten-free, or if you want to know if it's kosher or cruelty-free, vegan, all that stuff is in here. So it's really good to know. You can see that this comes from natural sources from a plant. And let's keep going. I'm going to skip some of this stuff because I want to get to the point of this video, which is to go down here. The natural statement, by the way, is one that you might be interested in if you're making natural soap. Here's another area that might be of interest to you, food allergen information. And here we are, IFRA. For now, I'm going to skip this little page and go down here because this is important. So the IFRA is not just in charge of fragrance for cold processed soap. They make sure that all fragrances, any fragrance that's created in a lab or any essential oil, anything that is used to scent a product is safe to use. And so that's their task. And they have all of these categories of products. So the IFRA, this is their 51st amendment, by the way. They keep changing. So, you know, usage rates don't always stay the same. They can change. And in fact, when I wrote this book, the usage rate of my cedarwood atlas was different at that time than it is now. And that can change by batch because some batches might have more of a particular component than another batch, just depending on, you know, where it was made even. Like, for instance, different types of peppermint aren't always the same usage rates. In addition, as time goes on and as they learn more about different components of essential oils and what might be problematic for people and what might not be, then those things change. And so that's what these amendments are. So this is a 51st amendment. We've got category 1, which is products applied to the lips. I'm not going to go through all of these, but this would be, you know, for lip balm. We've got lotions down here, 5A. This whole section on 5A through D are kind of lotion types things. And then there's hair and hands. And the one that we are looking for is this one. Cold processed soap is category 9. Products with body and hand exposure, primarily rinse off. So soap is a rinse off product, which means that you can use more essential oil or fragrance in your soap than you can, let's say, in your lip balm or your lotion. Because lip balm and lotion stays on your skin for extended periods of time. So there's more exposure to that essential oil. Whereas when you're using a soap, you basically put it on, you rinse it off almost immediately. So it doesn't stay on your skin as long. And so that's why the usage rates for soap are higher. Similarly, I think candles are down here somewhere. Yeah, somehow, I'm not sure which one is candles. There's some other, you know, the one that doesn't have any, here it is, number 12, I think. Products not intended for direct skin contact. Okay, so those would be candles. Now, massage candles wouldn't fall into this category, which massage candles are a thing. I've never used one, but apparently they used to be big and they're kind of fun. So anyway, this is where you want to look for your particular product, whatever it might be. And then you go back up here and you find your category. So this is the IFRA conformity certificate. So if I look at category 9, I can see that it says 100%. You'll see that for category 1, which is the lip balm, it's 27%. The usage rate for lavender is pretty high because it's one of the more safe essential oils on your skin. That doesn't mean you can just throw lavender on your skin, by the way. Essential oils always need to be diluted with some kind of carrier oil, or in this case, in our soap, But when it says 100%, that means 100% of the usage rate. So if we go back here, this is our usage rate right here. The usage rate for our soap. We've decided to use 2.5 ounces. So when it says 100%, that means you can use up to 2.5 ounces. It doesn't mean that you can use 54 ounces. I mean, I guess technically it does, but you wouldn't want to do that because then you'd have this super liquid soap. So one thing that's a little bit confusing for people is all of these percentages, I had somebody contact me and say, it says that you use 50% of this particular essential oil in your soap, but only, you can only use 2%. And what I was, saying that's the percentage of my blend. That doesn't mean that that's how much I'm using in the actual soap, if that makes sense. So the percentage of the blend is this part. This is the amount that it translates to in ounces. And then these percentages are based on the usage rate, which you see right here. So lavender is 100%. I'm using 2.31 in this particular blend, so I'm good. And that's what this column says. The maximum allowed is 54 ounces, which is based on this number. However, like I said, you would use 100% of, in total, you want your essential oil blend to be 2.5 ounces, not 54 ounces. So hopefully that makes sense. There's like the usage rate in the product. That's number one. We've figured out 2.5 ounces. Okay, that's the usage rate. Now let's figure out our blend based on that usage rate. So now we're talking about essential oil and fragrance oil usage rates, which is different. So hopefully that's not confusing. Hopefully this spreadsheet sort of clarifies that. But if you have any questions, definitely drop them in the comments and I'll try my best to answer everything. Okay, so I figured out the usage rate for lavender is 100%, so I put that in there. And again, that's based on this PDF that I got off New Directions Aromatics, which is called the Quality and Regulatory Information. And again, that's located here under the documents. Now, if you did not buy your essential oil from New Directions Aromatics, and one of the reasons I buy from them regularly is because they have so much great documentation. And let's say you bought it from Wholesale Supplies Plus. I've pulled up some websites here to see what kind of information they have available. So Wholesale Supplies Plus, if you click on their Lavender 4042, it pulls up a page and they actually make it pretty easy because they have product details down here and they include their usage rate. It says 5% here for soap. It also says 5% for lotion and 5% for candles. Now, they also have, let's see, down here they have the IFRA application guidelines. So let's see what's in there. Okay. So here's their categories, and they actually have it set up a little bit differently, which might be more intuitive because here it'll tell you all the different categories and what's in there. And I believe that category 9 says bar soap right in here. And as I mentioned earlier, I thought category 12 was candles, and it is. So they've even got cat litter in there, cell phone cases. I mean, if you're not sure, this might actually be a good place to go. So they are saying that it's 5% for everything, which is interesting because IFRA says 100%, but they're taking into account the usage rate for your product. So they're saying that this particular lavender, and again, just because it's lavender 4042, it doesn't mean that's the same as the lavender 4042 from New Directions. So this is how they're doing it. So this is saying 5% usage rate. So in this case, I would put 5% in my spreadsheet over here if I was getting lavender from Wholesale Supplies Plus. So as you can see, it still is compliant. You can still use the 1.25 in this particular blend. All right, I'm going to change that back to 100. Now let's take a look at Bulk Apothecary. Here's their essential oil section. These are all places I've gotten essential oils, by the way, so that's why I'm looking at these particular places. But if you get your essential oil from someplace else, then you probably want to, look at their particular website. All right, so where's my lavender? 4042, let's say I want to get 5 pounds of that. Come down here. All right, so they have the safety data sheet for the essential oils. And I don't see lavender 4042 listed in here. Oh yeah, here it is. So if I click on that and open it up, this is a safety data sheet, but I don't know if it'll have the usage rates in here. The safety data sheet doesn't normally have usage rates. That's under the quality and regulatory info or IFRA documents. So yeah, I don't see anything in here. So if you're purchasing from Bulk Apothecary, you may need to, either look up usage rates on another website to get some kind of idea. Like for lavender, I wouldn't be too concerned because the usage rate is 100% for lavender 4042 in New Directions. But if you were using something like clove or something that does have a lot of restrictions, I would definitely want to know what the usage rate was for the clove from this particular place. So you may need to contact them and find out usage rates. If you know where their usage rates are located, then definitely let me know. All right, so the last place we're going to look at is the Brambleberry website. Now, Brambleberry is a really common place for people to buy all their fragrances and essential oils. They don't have as many essential oils as they have fragrances, but let's take a look at their lavender 4042. All right, when I go in here, I see that there is an area here that has documents and they have the SDS report, but they do not seem to have the IFRA information. And I did already look at this SDS report, so I know it's not in there. And sometimes they have information here about how well it behaves in soap. And let's see, they have the candle testing rate amount, but I don't see anything about cold processed soap. Now, I do know that in Brambleberry, they have a fragrance calculator, and you can use that fragrance calculator to figure out usage rates in your soap. So that's how I've done it when I've bought essential oils from Brambleberry. But if you take a look at their fragrance oils, let's take a look at the oatmeal milk and honey. You'll see that they do have IFRA information included for their fragrance oils. So if I open this up, you'll see that the usage rate for category 9 is 5.78%. So if I was using this particular fragrance oil in the soap, I would change this to 5.78%. And that would show that I can use basically up to 6% of that particular fragrance in this soap. So wait a minute. Okay, so what I did is I just updated the calculator to include 2 decimal places so I can actually put the 5.78%, have it look like that. And let's go back here and look. Yeah, 5.78%. So if I put that in there, I can see that I can use up to 3.12 ounces. So I could use the full 2.5 ounces of fragrance in my oatmeal milk and honey. So that's just good to know. I find that typically, a lot of people do blend fragrance oils, but typically a lot of people will use 100% of a particular fragrance in their soap. And so if your total percentage usage rate for your entire soap is 4.63%, then, there'll basically be a flag if you are using 100% of a fragrance oil that is more than 4.63%. So that's just something to be aware of. All right, I will update the spreadsheet, by the way, before we put it up for you guys to download for free, so that it includes the 1/100th of a percent here so that it's the same as what you're seeing on this video. All right, so now that we have figured out our lavender usage rate is 100%, and we can use our 1.25 in our blend, now we need to go look at spearmint. So I'm going to go back to New Directions Aromatics because that's where I get my spearmint from. And I already pulled it up ahead of time, and you can see in here that the spearmint is the same as lavender. All the essential oils and fragrance oils should be the same. You'll go to GCMS and Documents, and then down here, you'll find the quality and regulatory info. And if you've opened these before, sometimes it'll jump right to the page that you need, which is very handy. So here it says 2% or less. So that's the amount for spearmint. I'm going to put that. That's why I put 2% here, but it's actually less than 2%. So you want to make sure that your number that is here, 1.08. So I would use 1 ounce probably in this blend if I wanted to use the max amount. But here the spreadsheet will tell you, it'll say no in big red. And also this number will be highlighted in red, which basically shows that you have too much of this essential oil based on the IFRA regulations. Now, if the usage rate was 5% for spearmint, then we would be good. And you see that this then turns into a yes. But since it's 2%, then this is flagged. And that's why the spreadsheet is so handy, is that it'll flag you. And you know that you're using 2.31 in your blend. So already you should have known that 2% usage rate, that if you're using 2.31, that's too much. So let me reformulate my blend. One thing you could do is lower your spearmint, for example, down to 20% and increase your lavender to 80%. And the total percentage is down here. So you just want this to come out to 100, and this would come out to 2.5. And so now you can see that you are compliant with this particular blend. However, instead of using lavender and spearmint, let's say I wanted to add some peppermint in here instead. And I'm thinking, I want it to be more minty, less lavender. So I'm going to replace some of the spearmint with peppermint instead. And let's say we want to use Japanese peppermint. Okay, so my spearmint, let's bring our lavender back to 50. The spearmint, I'm actually going to use 10% because I personally know that spearmint is really, really strong in soap. So sometimes the usage rate, it actually correlates with how strong a particular fragrance is. Like in this case, I don't think I'd ever want to use more than 2% of spearmint anyway. So it kind of works out for a lot of essential oils. Some of them are a little bit disappointing, like lemongrass, for example, has very low usage rate now since the new regulations came out. And we used to use a lot more lemongrass in some of our soaps. And so that one was kind of disappointing. But in a lot of cases, like clove and cinnamon and spearmint, the usage rate actually lines up with how much you'd want to put in your soap anyway. All right, so let's say this is my new blend, 50, 10, 40. And this, I think, would be a really nice blend. So we've got 1 ounce of the Japanese peppermint in there. And the reason this is flagging right now is because I don't have a usage rate in there. So let's look up our Japanese peppermint. So I'm going to start typing peppermint, and there's peppermint supreme, and here's the Japanese variety. Okay. Again, probably can't show this too many times because it is important to know where this is. Quality and regulatory info. We're going to scroll down. I don't know if I pointed this out earlier, but you can also see how your peppermint was distilled, which is really nice. They basically take the leaves, steam distill, and then you get the oil. So it's a very simple process. Some of these flow charts are going to be very complex and will have, solvent extraction and that kind of stuff. So just keep that in mind, that this is kind of a nice page to look at. All right, I'm going to scroll down quickly to our usage rates. Number 9 is 90%. Okay, so I'm going to put 90% in there. And now you can see that it is compliant. So this blend right here is going to be compliant as far as IFRA is concerned. And it's also compliant as far as the maximum amount of fragrance oil or essential oil that you're using in your entire batch of soap. I can't really emphasize this enough because I feel like this is where a lot of confusion happens. Your, entire recipe is 54 ounces of oils. You're going to base your fragrance load on that number of ounces of oil or grams. And then after that, you're calculating your usage rates for each essential oil. So hopefully the spreadsheet sort of clarifies that for you. All right, now that we have this figured out, there's another tab here in our spreadsheet that you may have noticed that I haven't shown you yet. And if you click on it, I've sort of created this repository of information because every time you create a blend, you're going to be changing the spreadsheet and you don't want to be having to look up IFRA rates, all the time. And so what I did for this video is I came up with some essential oils that I commonly use and I put in their usage rate. And then I highlighted the ones that have low usage rates that are less than what I typically use. Now I use 6.25%, which is that 1 ounce per pound of oils. And so anywhere that I saw something that was over 6.25%, I highlighted it. And this is just a visual reminder for me that when I'm using that essential oil, I need to be cautious of my blend. I want to make sure that my blend is going to be safe to use for everybody and that it follows the IFRA usage rate guidelines. Okay, I also included the supplier in here, the date that I looked this up, because the date is important because sometimes, as I said, those new IFRA guidelines come out. And so you want to know when you looked this up because you might want to check this every so often, maybe every quarter or so, just go through your list, make sure that the usage rates are the same. Or actually what makes more sense is to check it again once you've bought a new batch of essential oils, because sometimes there will be different usage rates per batch. So for example, if you get lavender 4042 one day, it might be 100%. And then the next time you buy it, it might be different. So definitely take a look at that. All right, and then I put the category here, which is category 9, because that relates directly to the percentage. All right, and then here I created a little sort of graph of the maximum usage rate based on the oils from the previous page. So if you change this amount of oils to 60, for instance, you'll see that the usage rates over here change based on that new number. So I tried to make this spreadsheet as easy to use as possible. I also have the grams right here. And what else? So in addition to all that, I've also included some instructions here that go through how to fill this out. And we'll go through this very, very quick right now, once again, so that you get a good idea of how to use the spreadsheet. So when you download it from our website, which you can do right now, just go to our website, muddymint.com, check out our recipes, and in there you'll see a free download for this fragrance calculator. And what you'll need to do is fill out these amounts in orange for your specific values. So whatever is your batch of oils in your recipe. And then, by the way, make sure that if you change your batch of oils, that you go back over here and update your fragrance amount, because that's important that you change that. Every time you make a batch, every time you change your ounces amount, you definitely want to go through and check all of these orange cells. So figure out your batch size. Again, if you go to Soap Calc, it'll tell you here the amount of oils in your recipe, 54 ounces. And then you want to review this range. And again, this range might differ depending on where you live, what your assessments might be in certain countries, whatever you feel is appropriate. I would say that this is the absolute max that you want to use in soap, but let's say you follow the recipe that we got from the Brambleberry website. They had 2.5 ounces for their fragrance. And then you'll fill in your blend. So this is just your percentages for your actual blend. And if you're just using one fragrance, it'll just be, oatmeal milk and honey, 100%. And that's it. And then you want to look up the usage rate. So we went over in detail how to find those usage rates. So hopefully that all makes sense. And if something is not compliant, this should come up as a no here with a red cell. But in general, if you make changes to the spreadsheet, you definitely want to make sure that you are not messing anything up. And every time that you create a new recipe, don't just take, the red cells for granted or whatever. Make sure that you're actually understanding what's going on here and how to calculate it. Because once you know yourself, you don't even really need the spreadsheet. This is just a way to facilitate getting all the information and saving it in one place. Again, we have grams here, so you can use this if you are not using ounces. And then the IFRA list of ingredients. All right. Whew, that was a lot, you guys. Thanks for sticking in there with me. I hope that was helpful. I hope you learned something. If I said anything wrong that you feel needs correcting, because this is an important area, you want to make sure that you're doing things properly, please let me know. I am very open to feedback and any kind of positive criticism that you might have of this video. But I am really hoping that this will help you out in your soap making, that'll empower you to have more information, understand how usage rates work, because this is a really complex topic, but it's really imperative that you know when you're making and selling your bars of soap. And finally, if you have not checked out our soap calc videos, definitely check them out. We did a great recipe formulation video that you might want to look at next, maybe right here or here. All right, have a great day, guys. Bye.